The day the fine arrived, the temperature had climbed past 102 degrees in our quiet suburban neighborhood outside Phoenix. The asphalt shimmered like a mirage, and the air felt thick enough to chew. That morning, I'd wheeled 2 coolers full of ice-cold bottled water down my driveway and parked them under the big mesquite tree at the edge of my yard. No banners, no megaphone, no fuss, just water, free for anyone who needed it. I didn't do it for praise. I did it because my neighbor Mrs. Ramirez, 82 years old and on oxygen, had nearly passed out 2 days earlier while walking her little terrier in that same brutal heat. And because when I was growing up in Tucson, my dad always said the same thing. In the desert, a bottle of water can save more lives than a lecture ever will. That lesson stuck with me through 22 years in the Marine Corps and the quieter years since retirement. So when I found the white envelope taped to my front door that afternoon, I figured it was another utility bill or maybe a pizza coupon. It wasn't. Violation. Unauthorized distribution of consumables in common areas. Fine, $100. Due within 14 days. Signed by HOA President Evelyn Harper. I stood there in the doorway, the paper trembling slightly in my hand, staring at the words until they blurred. $100 for giving away water? On my own property line? I scanned the street, empty except for the distant whine of a lawnmower. No one around to see the absurdity of it. Confusion came first, then a slow burn of disbelief. I wasn't mad yet, just stunned. Had someone complained? Was it the cooler itself? The ice? I walked across the street to Mrs. Ramirez's house with a fresh jug of filtered water and knocked gently. She opened the door in her housecoat, oxygen tank humming softly beside her. "Tom," she said, smiling weakly, "that cold water the other day was a godsend. I meant to thank you properly." I hesitated. Did anyone say anything about it? Anyone seem upset? She blinked. Who would? That Harper woman drove by earlier didn't even wave. That was all I needed. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with the notice spread out and my old German shepherd, Duke, snoring under my feet. I'd retired from the Corps 6 years earlier, expecting civilian life to be simpler. Instead, I was being punished in my own neighborhood for an act of basic decency. I called the HOA number listed on the notice. Straight to voicemail. I left a calm message asking for clarification on the exact violation. Then I pulled out the thick HOA covenants we'd received when we bought the house 4 years ago. 80-plus pages of rules. It took 20 minutes to find the section, "Residents shall not offer or distribute food or beverages in common areas without prior written board approval." Water was now a consumable. Kindness apparently required paperwork. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of the money, I could pay it, but because the notice felt like something colder than heat stroke. It felt like control, dressed up as concern. The next morning, I attended the regular HOA meeting in the community center, a low beige building that always smelled faintly of bleach and burnt coffee. I hadn't been in almost 2 years. I wore a collared shirt, took a seat near the front, and waited. Evelyn Harper ran the meeting like a courtroom. She wore her signature navy blazer with the HOA logo stitched on the pocket. Her hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. As the agenda wound down, I raised my hand. She acknowledged me after a long pause. "Yes, Mr. Harlan." I stood. "I received a $100 fine yesterday for handing out bottled water to neighbors on a 102-degree day." I read the covenants. I didn't sell anything. I didn't block anything. I'd like to know under what specific authority this was issued. Evelyn didn't flinch. Section 9.4 prohibits unauthorized distribution of consumables in common areas. So if someone gives cookies to kids on Halloween or hosts a lemonade stand on their own driveway, that's a violation too? Her lips thinned. "This isn't about cookies, Mr. Harlan. It's about maintaining standards and order." But that's not what the rule says. She leaned forward. "If you disagree with the fine, you may submit a dispute form for board review." The same board that issued it. A few people shifted in their seats. I took a breath. You're fining people for doing decent things. That's not order. That's overreach. Her face colored. Continued public challenge of board decisions may result in additional citations under Section 7.2, disruptive conduct. I sat down, jaw tight. As the meeting ended, a woman I barely knew, Sarah from 2 streets over, leaned close. "You're not alone, Tom. They fined me $75 last summer for handing out sports drinks during the 4th of July parade. Called it unsanctioned hospitality." Something shifted inside me. This wasn't personal. It never had been. 2 days later, I spotted Evelyn standing on the sidewalk across from my house, arms crossed, staring at the coolers still on my porch. Beside her was Frank Dillon, the HOA's compliance officer, a thin man with a perpetual clipboard and the demeanor of someone who'd never outgrown home monitor duty. They lingered for 10 minutes, eyes flicking between the coolers and the simple wooden bench I'd built years ago. I stepped outside with a mug of coffee and nodded. "Morning." No response. Frank scribbled something. I raised my mug in mock salute. They moved on. The covenant said nothing about coolers on private property, but I knew better than to trust that. Evelyn had a talent for interpreting rules creatively when it suited her. That afternoon, a second notice arrived. Violation, visual disruption of neighborhood aesthetic due to unauthorized objects visible from the street. Fine, $75. Translation, my bench and coolers were eyesores. I sat on that bench for an hour, watching kids ride bikes, parents wave, Mrs. Ramirez's caregiver wore trash bins out. Everything looked peaceful on the surface. Underneath, the tension crackled like dry lightning. That night, I walked past Evelyn's house, a tidy 2-story with perfect landscaping and an HOA sign staked in the flower bed like a claim flag. Her SUV was parked on the street after 10 p.m., a clear violation of the no street parking rule. I took a photo, not out of spite, out of fairness. If she wanted to weaponize the rules, two could play. The next day, I printed the photo, attached a short note. "Sometimes good people bend rules for practical reasons, just like you did," and taped it to her door at dawn. I knew it was gone. By afternoon, Frank knocked. "Mrs. Harper would like to remind you that leaving materials on doors is discouraged." "Is it prohibited?" He blinked. "Not exactly, but then I'll keep that in mind." He shifted. "You've now received 2 citations. Further issues may lead to a formal hearing." "Frank," I said quietly, "have you ever handed someone water on a day like this?" He looked away. "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point." He left without another word. The stories kept coming. Sarah told me about a wind chime fine. An older couple had been cited for raised garden beds with vegetables visible from a curb. A teenager's lemonade stand was shut down for unlicensed vending. If a kid selling lemonade threatened neighborhood harmony, the system wasn't broken, it was rigged. I started talking to people, quiet conversations on walks with Duke, notes slipped under doors. I learned about Article 28 in the covenants. If the board is found to act unreasonably or fail to serve the residents' interests, homeowners could petition for a no-confidence vote with 20% support and a majority quorum. Most folks didn't know it existed. Fear and fatigue had kept it buried. We started small. A simple flyer. "Does the HOA represent you? Share your story. Contact Tom Harlan." We distributed them discreetly. Emails poured in. Stories of fines, threats, quiet resentment. I compiled them into a folder. The pattern was clear. We met in my garage one rainy Saturday. 30 people showed up despite the weather. Chairs, coolers, clipboards, and years of bottled-up frustration. I wasn't eloquent, but I was honest. "This isn't about one cooler or one fine," I told them. "It's about years of being treated like tenants in our own homes. The board works for us, not the other way around." We passed petition forms. We planned. We listened. Evelyn fought back hard. Code enforcement showed up after an anonymous complaint about unauthorized gatherings. They found nothing. Spam flooded our email. Power to my porch lights was cut for non-compliant fixtures. A formal hearing notice arrived for me. Incitement of disharmony. I showed up with 30 neighbors, a folder of evidence, and a paralegal friend named Carla who'd volunteer to help. We laid it all out. The water fine, the bench removal, the retaliation, the pattern of overreach. Carla revealed we'd surpassed the 20% petition threshold. Evelyn's voice wavered for the first time. The hearing dissolved in a stunned silence, then slow applause. We held the recall vote at the community center 3 weeks later. 203 residents turned out. 190 voted to remove the board. 13 stood with Evelyn. She didn't accept it quietly. The next morning, a new letter arrived from a temporary emergency council claiming procedural flaws. The vote wasn't at the HOA clubhouse. Signs weren't pre-approved. They threatened injunctions, delays, more hearings. We didn't back down. We filed complaints with the county oversight office, built a public archive of every document, invited local press. The county reviewed and dismissed their claims. The old board was ordered to step down. We held a final, certified election at the high school gym. 237 residents voted. A new board was elected. Quiet, steady people who wanted service, not control. All prior fines were voided. Rules were rewritten for transparency and common sense. 6 months later, the neighborhood felt different. Kids sold lemonade without fear. Gardens bloomed openly. Monthly potlucks filled the park. A cooling station with free water stood in the community center, designed by volunteers, stocked year-round. One afternoon, Evelyn pulled into my driveway. No blazer, just a plain sweater. She looked smaller. I was wrong, she said quietly. After my divorce, after losing my parents, rules were the only thing I could count on. I thought I was protecting the neighborhood. I was protecting myself. I listened. She set an envelope on the bench, $100, reimbursement for the first fine. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to make it right. Come to the next meeting, I said. Sit in the back. Listen. She nodded. I might. She drove away. Not broken, but perhaps finally breathing. Now I sit on my rebuilt bench in the late afternoons, watching the lights stretch across the lawns. The cooler is still there. Sign reading, take one. Stay hydrated. Flowers appear on the bench weekly. Anonymous thanks. Community isn't perfect, but it's ours again. What do you think? Have you ever dealt with an overreaching HOA or seen power turn into control in your own life? Share your stories in the comments, especially about fairness, standing up to injustice, and what real neighborliness looks like. I'd love to hear your take.